So last week I'd say we got some pretty big answers. The biggest one of all, which is who threw the rope down to Boyd? And finding out that that was Julie and that Julie is a story walker are some pretty big reveals, guys. And we also get to see Elgin's slow descent into madness. But I'm sticking to the narrative that Elgin is being tricked the same way Sarah was, and that he is not truly an evil character, but we'll see how everything unfolds. One more episode to go, guys, and then we are out to dry again for like another year. So holy shit. But if you need some stuff to watch in the meantime, guys, I am also covering Silo, so you can look out for those recap and theory videos. Also, on top of that, I plan to put out some Severance coverage before the next season airs, so keep a lookout for that as well. And lastly, I haven't been pushing this as often as I've wanted to, but over on my Patreon, I have been posting some exclusive content. I plan on making a short video on The Maid and a lot of other shows and movies that you guys would not even expect me to be watching. But I am a fan of all genres. I just tend to like the weird shit a little bit more. If you're interested in some exclusive content, or if you want to make some specific requests for certain movies or shows that you want to hear my thoughts on, you'll get those exclusive videos over there on Patreon. So be sure to go over there and check out those tiers, and there might be something you'll like over there. But anyway, without any further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so we pick things right back up with Boyd and Ellis out in the woods searching for Fatima, and Boyd's telling Ellis how it's getting late and how they need to head back because Fatima does have the talisman with her. So they're like, hey, she'll be okay overnight. We can come back out tomorrow. And understandably, Ellis isn't trying to hear that. He's trying to continue to search for Fatima, but we see that Boyd's Parkinson's come back into play, and he almost stumbles and falls, and then Ellis no longer has a choice. They need to head back because Boyd isn't in good shape. Then we cut back over to the cellar with Fatima and Elgin, and Fatima reveals to Elgin how she saw the creepy Komodo lady and how what she's telling Elgin isn't true. But Elgin reveals to Fatima why he believes what she's saying is true. He tells her that the night she found out she was pregnant was the same night he remembered his dream when he was on the bus. And that's significant because it's what allowed Boyd to save the town. So he blames him remembering his dream on the night that Fatima got pregnant and the baby. But my thing is that technically him remembering his dream probably didn't have anything to do with Fatima being pregnant. And plus we can't forget that Bacta played a pretty big role in Elgin remembering his dream. It was her who remembered the nursery rhyme, which is technically mostly what led to Boyd realizing that it had something to do with the music box, which he found out that he needed to destroy. But I'm not going to stop pushing back on Boyd using the torch to light it in the ruins to get back to the music box in the chamber and where Martin was and all of that stuff. Not going to stop pushing back on that. You can comment till your fingers hurt. That part just didn't add up, period. But whatever. The point is that Elgin is making a connection between two things that more than likely just did not mean anything. The Komodo lady is using this to use Elgin. Ultimately, Elgin gets the jar of blood and talks Fatima into drinking it, which she does indulge. And we also get to see in this moment that the talisman is hanging on the door in the room that Fatima is being kept in. So she is being protected from the monsters, but at the same time she still could be turning into one, or the baby she's having is a monster. So she could be getting protected from a monster, but at the same time she could be giving birth to a monster as well. So that talisman being in there probably isn't really doing much. But of course Elgin isn't aware of this because he's being fed lies, of course. Or at least that's my opinion. The Komodo lady is definitely feeding him lies. So yeah, although Elgin feels like the baby is helping them, I think Elgin is crazy. Also, the town just seems to target weak people, or people who are in a vulnerable or now weak position. I think originally that was Sarah and now it's Elgin. Jade really didn't start seeing things until he was more so in a desperate position. Same thing with Boyd. He didn't really start seeing Father Cautry until he started being in a position where he didn't really know where to get advice from. Jade wasn't necessarily in a vulnerable position when he first started seeing things in the town, but I do feel like Jade was a bit vulnerable when he got there, and he did have a difficult time swallowing the fact that he was trapped in a place where he could not leave. I think coming to that realization in the beginning was very difficult for Jade to deal with. I think during the time the town may have seen that as a weakness, which might explain all the visions he was getting in the beginning. And now as we slowly get to see him kind of descend into chaos around these puzzles and patterns and things like that, the more he begins to see things. And the same situation that applies to Boyd as well with subconscious Cautry also applies to Jade when it comes to Tom. That's someone he used to bounce ideas off of and kind of seek guidance from to a certain extent, and now that person's gone and now he sees that person. So the whole vulnerable theory isn't completely true, but I think it applies more than not. Then we cut back to the church with Tabitha, Sarah, and Victor as they're still trying to get answers out of Victor, but he's having a difficult time because he remembers the fact that he told his mom about the tree and that's how she got killed. So of course Victor feels guilty because he told his mom about the tree after getting the information from the boy in white, and then she ended up dying. So because of this, Victor is having a difficult time wanting to continue with this whole mission. But there's a big new thing that happens here between Tabitha and Victor as Victor decides to walk away out of the church. Tabitha grabs his arm, and she has some sort of feeling or possible vision after touching Victor. She kind of goes into some sort of trance, like she just witnessed or felt something from him. And of course, in this moment, we don't get a lot of information on what just happened. And even Sarah in this moment asked Tabitha what happened after she touched Victor. But before Tabitha has a chance to answer, Kenny bursts through the door to tell Tabitha about what happened to Julie out in the woods and how she's needed over at the hospital. So yeah, let's just briefly discuss what we think just happened with Tabitha a second ago when she grabbed Victor. So I'm thinking Tabitha possibly always had the ability to touch people and feel things from them, but I do believe that this is the first time that we've visually seen her have to put her hands on somebody else. I don't think she's ever really needed to put her hands on anyone in the town who has some level of importance that she can actually get information out of outside of someone like Victor. So I'm not really sure if this is an ability that she just obtained because she's getting much closer to her destiny now, or if this was an ability she always had and she just never really exercised it by putting her hands on someone else. Or like I said, someone of importance, because of course she touches people like Ethan and Julie and her family members and stuff like that, but maybe it's only triggered by someone who actually knows something within the town, someone who has some level of importance. And in this situation, with it being someone like Victor, someone who's having a difficult time remembering certain details about his life and things like that, she's able to pull that out of him. So there's a connection there between her and Victor. So let me get you guys' thoughts on this down below. Do you think that this is something that Tabitha always had the ability to do, or this is something that was recently obtained through some sort of experience she recently had throughout season 3? Then we cut over to Julie at the hospital as she's informing them about what happened to her out in the woods with Randall. Christy and everyone, of course, wants to know what happened to her, and she tells them how she was at the ruins and she walked inside and blacked out. Now, of course, once again, everybody wants to defend the fact that they feel like Kenny knew to take Julie out of the ruins and all of that crazy other stuff like that, but just think about this. If Kenny knew what you thought he knew, then he would inform Christy and Marielle, of course, right? He wouldn't leave them to be like, oh, what happened to Julie? I mean, if Kenny actually knew, he would actually tell Marielle, fill Christy in, like, hey, there's something weird about the ruins. You know, nobody needs to enter that area. Which once again enforces my point that nobody actually knew about the ruins and to take Julie out of it. And that is why that was a scene that needed a little bit more explaining. Them getting there immediately and picking Julie up and sitting her outside the ruins was just a weird scene to have. Like I said, if it was true that Kenny actually knew, why would he keep this kind of information to himself? Why wouldn't he alert the town and let everybody know, hey, stay away from the ruins, weird things happen when you're out here? Also, Marielle and Christy wouldn't have the current questions that they have right now about what happened to Julie. So yeah, there's my point on that. But anyway, in this moment, Jim just has the weirdest reaction. Instead of being like, oh, this town has been doing weird things to my daughter, she was just in a cicada coma and then she was out at these ruins and something else weird happened to her. Instead of blaming these occurrences on the town, Jim is still looking for an actual person to blame. So he's like, oh, you were out there with Randall? Really? You were out there with Randall? Well, let me go talk to him. Jim is on some crazy shit, right? Like Jim, I think we can all agree, which I think we all have agreed on for the most part. The majority of us agree that Jim is on some crazy shit. He keeps wanting to blame a particular person within the town, but the logic just ain't there, Jim. We're on season 3 right now, and you're still stuck on trying to think within the bounds of your own thoughts, your own anecdotal experience. But you're in a place where your anecdotal experience just doesn't apply. You're in a place where logic just doesn't apply here. You have to think differently within Fromland to actually get somewhere, to actually make progress. But Jim is just constantly backwards pedaling right now, and I don't feel like this is going to end well for him. All right, so Jim goes to speak to Randall, and maybe I spoke a little too soon because he does go to Randall in a very calm sort of manner for the most part, really truly and honestly trying to get answers out of Randall about something he does not understand. And I really honestly think that this is the first time we've ever seen Jim approach anyone asking for answers without using the tough guy routine. He goes to Randall quite generously, just wanting to know, wanting to understand more about what's happening to him, Julie, and Marielle. And of course, Randall tells him, like, hey, I don't really know what the hell's going on. The place just felt wrong, and I told Julie not to go back. I don't know why I told her that. It just didn't feel right. And also, I forgot to mention that right before Jim walks in, Randall is hearing the cicadas just buzzing in his ears, just still bothering the shit out of him. And it seems like Julie doesn't really hear the cicadas. And of course, we haven't gotten the details on what's going on with Marielle just yet. But of course, Julie Julie's hearing the screaming, which got quieter when they got to the ruins. I'm kind of curious to know if the same thing happened with Randall the first time he visited the ruins with Julie. Did the cicada stop buzzing for him as well? But of course we don't have those answers at the moment. But I do give Jim a couple of points back for approaching Randall in that way, and honestly just really wanting to know what's going on with his daughter. It seems like he's slowly starting to understand that he is not in control of what's happening right now, and maybe he need to put his guard down, understand that he doesn't really know shit, and he needs to ask questions and just kind of think differently about the situation he's in. So I'm happy to see the progress right now. Hopefully it's not too late for him. Then we cut over to the sheriff's station where Boyd and Ellis are arriving back from the woods, and Boyd ensures that Fatima should be okay because she has a talisman. And although Ellis is concerned about Fatima, he's also very concerned about his father. And he wants to know more information about what's going on with him and how long this has been happening for. And Boyd tells him that it's been going on for a while and that he's known for a while what's happening to him. But of course, Ellis wasn't aware of this. He's probably either going to be pretty pissed or pretty jealous to find out that Kenny knew that all of these things were happening way before he did, Boyd's stepson. So yeah, looking forward to seeing that conversation. Then over at Colony House for a brief moment, we just see Donna walking around missing Fatima. She was the light of Colony House and now she's missing and she's really feeling it. Then we cut back over to the hospital and we can see that outside is starting to get pretty late. But also at this point with Jim and Tabitha, he's showing that he honestly is beginning to change. He tells Tabitha that he won't second guess her anymore and that if she has a way out of the town or she has something that she wants to follow that she believes that can help them get out of there, he's not going to second guess her anymore and he's going to go with the flow. And it's kind of interesting that Jim comes to this revelation, you could say, or realization, because this being episode 8, it's kind of weird. Why is he now having such a difference in opinion now at the very end of the season? Is this really a turning point for the character, or is this not a good sign for Jim? It's just kind of strange that they're finally having him go with the flow at the end of season 3 after 2 seasons, and pretty much the majority of season 3. Then we cut back over to the sheriff station with Boyd and Ellis does find out that Kenny knew before him. And of course the look on his face shows that he was pretty pissed and surprised to see this, but he does end up letting it go because what's more important is that Boyd is all right, rather than being pissed that Kenny knew before him. But it is a fair reason to be upset. That would have me pretty upset as well. But then Boyd goes on to tell Ellis that he needs to tell him something else. And he goes on to reveal to Ellis how the monsters made him watch Miss Lou be tortured and killed. And he tells Ellis that the monsters told him that they wanted to break him. And then he goes on to tell Ellis, like, what if this whole mysterious pregnancy situation with Fatima is a part of their master plan? And of course Ellis doesn't want to believe it. He's like, no, that's not connected. It can't be, whatever. And my thing is that Boyd might actually be onto something. What if they actually wanted this to affect Fatima? This whole situation possibly could have affected any young enough woman in Frumland, but instead it ended up affecting someone that's actually quite close to Boyd. And if we also take note of one detail, which I don't think I'm mistaken about this, but that whole situation actually happened after Fatima became family to Boyd, after her and Ellis got married. So maybe now that Fatima is actually a lot closer to Boyd and she's actually family now, maybe that's why they targeted her in the first place. And also there was a pretty funny moment that happened in this situation with the monsters. One of the monsters knock on the window and they're like, hey, you're all right in there, Boyd? And then when he goes to look out of the window, she makes a gun gesture like she's about to blow her brains out, like that's what Boyd should do. So that's them pushing him once again, trying to push him over the ledge to break him. But that was actually pretty funny. Then after that, we end up cutting over to Sarah's place, where it looks like she's putting back together that figurine that I think Kenny broke outside the diner after he found out that she was the reason why his dad was killed. I think he ended up shattering that figurine and also wanted to beat Sarah's ass, of course. But I'm pretty sure that's the reason why she's putting this figurine back together. It meant a lot to her, and that's why she's building it back. But at this time, the good old voices start coming back to Sarah, which the voices are something that have always affected Sarah no matter where she is. I know some people mentioned down in the comments how the voices that Sarah hears affected her a lot at the ruins, but you got to remember that Sarah has been hearing these voices literally all over Frumland. This is not something that's only specific to the ruins for her. This happened when she was out at the bottle tree with Boyd. This is what happened to her over at the diner, which originally told her to kill Ethan, and then now it's happening again right now at her own house while she's alone. So this is something that's been affecting Sarah for quite some time all over Frumland. It is not specific to the ruins. So I know some people wanted to use that as an argument, like, oh, she started hearing the voices over over at the ruins and all of that crazy stuff. But yeah, this is something that's always happened to her. She had the nosebleed and the voices and all of that stuff over at the bottle tree as well. But there is nothing specific about that area that made it an evil area or, cursed grounds or anything like that. So yeah. But anyway, it really does make you wonder what is happening to Sarah in this moment. What is it now trying to get her to do? Because it seems like for the most part, every time Sarah hears the voices, it's trying to get her to do something, or it's trying to like egg her on. The first time she heard the voices, it was telling her to kill Ethan. The second time out in the woods with Boyd, when it was speaking to Sarah, it told her to give a message to Boyd, and it really did seem like it could have been Abby, but I'm not sure if that was done to egg him on. And the next time it was negatively telling Sarah something was out at the ruins when it told Boyd that it was laughing at him. Now, I think there have been some occurrences where Sarah has heard the voice and it hasn't been completely negative, like when she was down in the church basement with Father Cautry and he was actually able to get answers out of her through the voices she was hearing. And it revealed to Father Cautry how it knew when he first got there, he went out in the woods and buried some stuff, the candy bar and the bloody clothes and all of that stuff. Also, I believe there was another occurrence too where Sarah actually got some useful information, but it doesn't seem like it's always negative. But for the most part, it does seem like it's pretty torturous and usually not that helpful at all. So yeah, very curious to know what it's telling Sarah now. Then we cut over to Elgin as he's going to go visit Fatima down in the cellar, and we can see that she now has a little baby bump, which it seems that he was right. Her drinking the blood is actually now causing her stomach to grow. Fatima tries to use a tactic in this moment by cutting Elgin and trying to escape, but he drags her back in the room. He tells Fatima that she's not a prisoner, but when she tries to leave, he drags her back in the room. So yeah, of course we know now that Elgin is nuts. It's just funny to think back how he told her she wasn't a prisoner, but he just won't let her leave. Alright, so afterwards we cut back over to the sheriff's station with Boyd, Ellis, and then Sarah pops up eventually, but Ellis wants to run out and try to look for Fatima. Boyd's like, we can put together a search party, but Ellis is like, nah, that's more than likely not gonna happen after Donna tells everyone what Fatima did. During this time, as Ellis is on his way out, Sarah walks in and gives them both information on what the voices said. They told her that Fatima is somewhere close, but Sarah goes on to tell them that the voices were laughing because they know that Boyd and Ellis will not find Fatima in time. So yeah, this is kind of strange because I guess I would say that this is sort of half and half. This is sort of like a negative thing from the voices, but also a positive thing from the voices. They actually told her that Fatima was close by, which is kind of helpful. But then at the same time, they were also laughing because they know they won't find her in time. Yeah, it's kind of bittersweet with that situation. Then we cut over to Colony House as we see Victor losing it and tossing all kinds of shit out of the window. Anything that contains a memory, because the memories are now starting to hurt, he's chucking that shit out the window. And then he runs downstairs to the kitchen and grab an axe, and then he tells Officer Acosta and Kenny that he's going to go cut down a damn tree. They're afraid that Victor might go hurt someone, but he's like, nah, I just need to go cut down a damn tree. So yeah, a lot of hurtful memories are starting to pour back into Victor's mind, and he's having a difficult time dealing with it. Then over at the diner, we're seeing something we haven't seen in a while. We got some home-cooked meals going in this bitch right now, thanks to the sister Bacta. She's in there trying to provide some new joy back to Frumland, so good on her. And the Matthews get to do something they also haven't done in a while, which is have a family meal together. Back over at Colony House, Boyd tells Donna about what Sarah told him about what happened to Fatima. He tells Donna that something or someone took Fatima and that the voices were laughing. But before she gets that information about Fatima, she tells Boyd immediately when he walks in the room how she's not going to tell anyone about what she did because she doesn't think anyone will be able to take it. She thinks that that kind of information surrounding someone who was very positive, very good to the town, how they did something very evil. And if the town could make someone as nice and positive as Fatima do something so malicious, then there's really no hope for any of them. So Donna thinks it's just smart not to tell anyone because of the possible negative effect that it could actually have on the town. Then we cut back over to the diner to find out that Boyd and Donna have now put together a search party to look for Fatima. And Boyd reveals to everyone how Fatima is close by. And of course they want to know how in the hell does he know this? And he just tells them that something there told them and that whatever it is laughing and it thinks that they won't be able to find her in time. So after a little inspirational speech by Boyd, everyone kind of bands together and goes on a search for Fatima. So for a brief second, we cut back over to Fatima in the cellar room as we find out that she discovers a door that leads underground. So she begins digging and it looks like she's going to try to use this as a way out before Elgin returns. The only problem with that is that since that door leads underground, we already know what's underground in the town. So that's probably not the best way out. I don't know. Especially if you're stumbling and you're having a difficult time walking, that's probably not the best way to try to get out of there. And we already know that the monster monsters are still possibly a threat to Fatima because they're still using the talisman on the door. So although the creepy Komodo lady told Elgin to trap Fatima in the cellar room, it didn't tell him that he wouldn't need the talisman. So we actually don't know if monsters are still a threat to Fatima or not. Out in the woods with Officer Acosta and Donna, Officer Acosta has a lot of questions, of course, understandably. Of course, someone new here would have a lot of questions about people who hear voices, and how do you know that they're not lying about the voices that they claim to be hearing in their head and all of that kind of shit. She's asking very logical questions, but she doesn't really know what's going on here or how the town works. It's quite annoying to us fans who have been watching the show since the beginning. We understand that there's a lot of weird shit that happens and she needs to get caught up. Now, although a lot of people don't like Officer Acosta, I do think a character like her is needed because it kind of reminds me of Jade when he first got to the town. We do need people like her who are aggressively looking for questions, lighting a fire underneath everyone's ass to sort of remind them that we still need to be focused on getting out of this place. We don't need to get comfortable because getting comfortable here won't last very long. So although I'm not really a big fan either of Officer Acosta, I do think that type of element is needed in the show. Now, someone like Randall initially, who was in the town shaking up shit and really causing more issues for everyone else, that was more of a problem. But now in season 3, since Randall has finally came around and he's being more helpful and more chill, he's not really much of a problem anymore. He's not trying to kill anyone to get answers out of people or think that people in the town are trying to trick him. Because we gotta admit, Randall was becoming a problem for the people in town, and they were probably gonna have to put his ass in the box or something. But now that he has calmed down, I think everything's all good. Then also during the whole search party situation out in the woods with Boyd and Kenny, they have another very touching moment, which is the second one they've had this season. And these are really good moments. I think Kenny and Boyd have had the best, most touching moments out of season 3 so far. The first one, which I think is the most touching and best scene of season 3, was when Boyd was ready to put it all on the line to go down into the monster caves with Kenny and try to kill as many of those bastards as they could. I think that was the most touching moment of season 3 so far. That was a really dope scene. The second scene right here we get between Boyd and Kenny is, Boyd letting Kenny know that the Parkinsons are starting to get way worse and he needs to know that Kenny will step up once he's gone. And Kenny's like, no, I won't take your badge, but if you need a deputy, I'll take that badge back. And I think that was pretty dope as well. Boyd and Kenny have way more of a father-son relationship than him and his own son Ellis. And it's pretty crazy, but it's true. It's very true. Then over at the bar outside with Jade and Henry, Henry comes to tell Jade that everyone is out searching for Fatima and wants to see if he wants to join in. And he also tells Jade how he wanted to talk to him about something related to Victor. But before all of this, we get a very interesting scene where we see Jade hanging up the bottles, making his own personal bottle tree beside the bar, where he sees Christopher and Jasper sitting on the roof beside him. And he's just like, oh shit, I'm getting tired of this. You gotta find something new to use. It's getting old. And then Jasper scares the shit out of him and he almost falls off the ladder. So yeah, he hasn't gotten too used to it. The scares continue to get Jade. And we don't get any new information in this scene, but at the same time we kind of do. There is an underlying hint that happens here between Christopher and Jade with Jasper, and it's not something that viewers are actually going to understand until the finale of this season. And of course, if you are already aware of any leaks for the finale, do not put them down in the comments because they will be removed. Anyone who just flat out comments exactly what's going to happen in the finale, some of the comments I have left up because they are more theories than the truth. A lot of people have put things down in the comments about plot leaks or things that they saw that were leaked on Twitter or Reddit, and a lot of those comments I have seen have been either half wrong or completely wrong. So I am sorry to break it to you guys who do have leaks on the finale who think that everything you've said is true, but a lot of what you guys have is actually wrong. And it's kind of funny to see and know that it's wrong but not speak up and be able to say anything right now. But you guys will find out soon enough about how much of what you already knew is actually correct and what is wrong, because everything you guys know is not correct. I'll tell you that. I've seen the finale several times already, and yeah, what you guys know isn't fully right. But anyway, moving on. Then back out in the woods, we cut to Victor as we see that he's on his way to cut down the special faraway tree. Not the normal faraway tree, but the special one. The one that the boy in white told Christopher about that he ended up telling his mom about, which got his mom killed. He blames that tree because technically that tree is the reason why he got the information that he got to tell his mom, which led her out to the tree, which got her killed. So yeah, I guess that's fair enough, but honestly, it's mainly Victor's fault. Yeah, I know that's kind of harsh, but technically it is his fault. During this time, while Victor goes to cut the tree down, the boy in white pops up, and finally, which I'm kind of surprised that they did this show never really tends to acknowledge a lot of the choices that are made throughout the show. But I think this season has been the most transparent season out of all of the seasons. I mean, when Henry first got to the town, he questioned the motel not being there. Officer Acosta had a lot of questions about what's going on in the town. And then in this scene, we have Victor asking the boy in white, why is he getting older? Why does he look different? Which is a really good point. But of course, the writers wanted to write this kid aging into the story, because I'm pretty sure that this is the same kid, but of course he's growing older. So they're just writing the fact that he's growing older into the story, and they explain it away by saying, you know, everything's changing. The seasons are changing while they're up in Nova Scotia and it's snowing and all of that stuff. Explain it by saying Fromland is changing. The boy in white is getting older. Explain it by saying things are changing. So this does now give them more room to be a little bit more loose with the story. But of course, you don't want to be too loose with the story, because that's a lot of the things that tend to upset the fans of this show, especially the people who have came from Lost and now they're watching From. They feel like a lot of things are just kind of going nowhere. So I don't really mind them finding a way to better explain situations like that. I just don't want the whole thing where they're just writing us into a hole, giving us nonstop questions that don't have answers. I don't mind if they just throw out a full umbrella explanation at the end of the series to explain the majority, if not all, of the questions we have. I'm okay with that. I don't need specific answers for every single question. As long as there is some conclusion that cover most questions, I'll be okay with that. Which, if we look back at interviews we've seen with Harold Perrineau where he's been asked this question, and is this show going to have an ending and all of that good stuff, he has came out and said that there will be an ending and we will get answers. So that's enough for me. But yeah, I just thought that was dope that they acknowledged the fact that the boy in white is getting older and all of that stuff. And Victor at this point in time is just asking for help. He's like, you're supposed to be my friend. You're supposed to help me. And the boy in white said he actually tried to help them with Christopher. And if we think back on what Christopher did, he was actually driven crazy by the symbol. And I think he went on like a killing spree afterwards. So correct me down below if I'm incorrect about that. But I think that symbol drove him nuts and it led him to killing everyone. So how is that supposed to be helpful for everybody? I'm not quite sure, but I guess Christopher didn't quite decipher what he was being told by the town. He just couldn't understand it, and that drove him crazy and drove him to killing everybody. Or the boy in white could possibly be malevolent, and the symbol driving Christopher crazy was a part of his plan the whole time. Maybe the boy in white was trying to help them by cleansing the town, by killing everybody, which also brings back a theory that was mentioned earlier by Abby, which is, what if this is all a dream and we all need to kill everybody to wake everyone up? Which, if I'm not mistaken, this is the same thing that sort of happened with Christopher. He kind of went on a killing spree and started trying to kill everybody. So maybe killing everybody is the way they truly get home. I don't know. But I do think it's possible that the boy in white's plan could have been to drive Christopher crazy and lead him to a killing spree. I think that outcome was possible, and I think that could possibly be the outcome for Jade as well because of the connection Jade has to Christopher. But hey, that's just my theory. But anyway, the boy in white does reiterate that Christopher was the help that he was trying to provide to them, and how now he feels like they just need to learn for themselves, but the only help that he can give Victor right now is that he should not cut down the special faraway tree, and then he walks away and disappears. Then we cut to Elgin and Ellis as they are also out searching for Fatima, which we're pretty sure that Elgin's definitely going to keep Ellis from finding Fatima for sure. But Elgin is out there trying to convince Ellis that maybe what's happening isn't that bad. How they probably shouldn't be that worried about what's going on with Fatima. But of course, Ellis ain't trying to hear this shit. He's trying to find his wife, and it obviously sounds like Elgin is taking crazy pills. And honestly, if he keeps pushing this narrative, he's just going to reveal to everyone that it's him who has something to do with this. After that, we cut out to Jim and Ethan, who are approaching their RV because Jim feels like it's possible that Fatima could be there. So they look around in the RV where all of this originally began. And of course, Fatima isn't there. During this time, he has a very touching moment with Ethan and tells them how this place just wants them to blame themselves for all the misfortune. And at this time, the radio turns on and it's fake Thomas on the other line, just saying dad and giggling and all of that good stuff. And they just walk out and Ethan's like, it's not Thomas. Now this time on the radio, we see a 1B or a 16, one of the two. But I don't know what that symbolizes, so you guys let me know what your theories are down below of the digits on the radio, if you think it means something or if you think it's nothing. I know there are some viewers who think every little thing in the show means something, but I don't believe that. I think some things have significance and some things just don't. But I know that's not going to stop anybody from looking at the grains of sand on the street and thinking, hey, that one's black, so it must mean something. So yeah, but once again, this is another reconciliation or redeemable moment for Jim. Why are we getting all of these redeemable moments? Now he's willing to listen. Now he's much nicer. Now he's really trying to understand people. What's going on here with Jim? Then we cut over to Julie and Tabitha as Julie further informs Tabitha about what happened to her when she walked into the ruins, and how she doesn't think she was dreaming, how it felt like she actually went somewhere. She informs Tabitha about the chamber and Martin and Marielle and everyone being chained up, and then she tells her how she ended up in the monster caves and how she could hear her voice and the children and all of that stuff. Tabitha definitely understands that something seriously is going on with Julie for sure. But at this time, one of the dirty little white children show up and tells Tabitha to follow her out in the woods. Then afterwards we cut out to Jade and Henry, as Henry is explaining that he's having a difficult time reconnecting with Victor. And of course Jade doesn't really care about any of this shit. He would rather Henry just talk to someone else about it. But ultimately Jade tells Henry that you're trying to fix Victor when he's not broken. Which he does have a point, but I honestly think that this whole scene is here to throw us off. It's here to establish a connection between Victor and Jade, which Henry tells Jade, you remind me of my son. But also it establishes another connection between Henry and Jim, where we see Jim finally wanting to come around and listen to everybody and change and be different. It seems like Henry is still in that space to some degree with Victor. He's like, how do I reconnect with Victor? How do I get him to come around or be different or anything like that? But he doesn't understand that he needs to meet Victor where he is. He can't change Victor, and he can't make him into this little kid that he once knew again before he got lost in Frumland. He now has to reconnect with Victor where he currently is. But of course we do see the wisdom in Henry, because he wants to know how he can reconnect with his son, which is why he's having this conversation with Jade. But we see that that way of thinking is still somewhat reminiscent to the way Jim was with his family. So I think that that's a connection that they wanted to establish in this scene to possibly throw us off or reestablish the connection that they have. They meaning Jim and Henry. Then we cut back to Ellis and Elgin over at the Brundles, which is what I believe what they call the little water hole where they used to have fun over at Colony House. It hasn't been much fun being had in Frumland these days, but I believe that's what they used to call this location, the Brundles. But at this time, Elgin basically completely reveals himself to Ellis by telling him about the dream he had on the bus on their way to town, and how Fatima having the baby could possibly be a good thing for them. And he starts throwing out a lot of hints to Ellis, kind of just pointing out how he's possibly behind all of this. It just kind of looks fishy for him to be talking this way while they're currently out looking for Fatima. And you can see on Ellis's face that he's picking up on this. So yeah, pretty much over for Elgin. After this, we start to do a cut back and forth between Fatima in the cellar and Tabitha and Julie in the woods, who are following the dirty little white child. I think this scene is what solidifies that the dirty little white children are good. So I might need to stop calling them the dirty little white children, but they are dirty little white children. So I'm not really sure what else to call them. But this scene is what solidifies that the dirty little white kids are good, because the little girl leads Tabitha and Julie to the cellar where Fatima is being kept. And then down in the cellar, we can see the creepy Komodo lady covering up Fatima's face, because it knows that Tabitha and Julie are outside and that they would definitely hear Fatima scream. And this also points out that the creepy Komodo lady is actually able to appear and touch and do things to people. I mean, we kind of knew this from the scene where it almost drowned Elgin, but we also kind of felt like he was falling asleep and possibly dreaming, so we weren't really sure if that moment was actually happening or not. But at this time, we actually do get to see the creepy Komodo lady interacting with Fatima in real time, showing that she can just appear and do things to people, which is pretty fucking crazy and kind of overpowered. And then the episode ends with a lot of crazy shit just happening right now, so I'm gonna just break down everything. And one thing that was kind of weird. So when Tabitha and Julie get to the cellar and they go to walk in, Tabitha touches the door and then she has some kind of other weird thing that happens to her, like she sees a vision maybe. But we don't actually get to see this vision. As she walks in, she finds Victor and he's already there with his back turned, looking kind of creepy, like something weird is possibly gonna happen. But we find out that he's just there still pondering and lingering on the fact that he told his mom to go out to the tree. So in this moment, Tabitha goes and tries to console Victor by giving him a hug. When she goes to give Victor a hug, we can see that she flashes back to a memory of Miranda giving Victor and Eloise a hug, which is once again reiterating the idea that she is Miranda. At this point, I don't even think it's just reiterating anymore. It's just straight out telling us that Tabitha is Miranda. She was Miranda and she still is Miranda reincarnated. After seeing this, Tabitha takes off and runs out of the cellar and crying in distress, and we finally see the memory come back to to her of Miranda being killed by the faraway tree. And we also get to see how she was killed by Grinning Gary, Mr. Smiley. And also for the first time we get to see one of the monsters running, which is, we didn't know they could do that. I don't think we've ever seen any of the monsters run up to this point. He literally sprints at her and just tackles her ass. So basically this confirms that Miranda is Tabitha reincarnated. And in a weird way, she is Victor's mom. But one thing that's kind of weird was that Victor was already in the cellar. And it makes you wonder, was he actually there before the creepy Komodo lady covered up Fatima's mouth to keep her from screaming? I mean, it's kind of strange. He was there waiting with his back turned in a weird sort of way. I mean, is Victor beginning to play more of sort of a malicious role in all of this? I mean, it's kind of weird. I don't personally believe that that's true, but it was kind of weird how he was already there waiting with his back turned. It was kind of weird, especially with Fatima being right on the other side of that door. And yeah, that's how the episode ends. But I gotta get you guys' thoughts on what I thought was the most interesting thing from the ending of this episode, which was seeing Smiley run and tackle Miranda. Seeing one of the monsters running for the first time, I mean, is this something that they all can do and they just don't do it? I mean, this would create a huge threat, especially how fast he went and just tackled her ass to the ground. I mean, holy shit. I think Smiley played football. But I mean, I gotta get you guys' thoughts on this. That was pretty wild to see him just sprint over and just fucking take her ass out. This was nuts. But I definitely would say that this is confirmation that Miranda is Tabitha. And now that these pieces are all beginning to come together and connect, the only question we have left now is what is actually going to happen to Fatima. It seems like she's definitely going to give birth to a baby because her stomach is getting big. So I do think that throws out the her turning into a monster theory, and she's actually having a kid now. So she's giving birth to a monster is my guess. But I gotta get you guys' thoughts on this episode down below. Where do you think this is going? Are you surprised to see Smiley just take off and run that fast? Holy shit, the actor's quick. Let me get you guys' thoughts on all of this. But guys, as always, thank you for watching.